We haven't had a sunny day in like forever.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous.
Yeah, finally. It's been raining all the day or just like super cold, so it's really nice.
Nice little break in it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Welcome to the Exchange Art Artist Workshop series. We're here today to dive in deeper to what makes an artist tick throughout the ecosystem, what drives them as an artist, and how they navigate the space in general. We're joined here today by Ilan Derech, and really, really excited to jump in today. As a fellow photographer, I'm a huge fan of your work, so it's been long overdue to get this chat on the books here.
Isn't it crazy? Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. It's just like really eerie because I remember that you were one of the first people that I met, even like before getting Solana, before everything. Like I remember hearing you in spaces and what about more than a year ago, and now here we are. It's just like kind of crazy. I still like can't believe this.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how much everything's grown in like different directions, right? But it's really amazing to watch this growth happen and be part of so many different people. Like that's one of my favorite things about this space is getting to meet people like you and all these other amazing creators, and then like kind of watch all of our journeys happen, right? It's cool to see what the outcomes are.
Yeah, totally. I think, well, obviously, like a lot of us come from Instagram days, which they're still kind of over there. But I'm sorry, the current. It's so annoying. The camera keeps adapting. There we go.
It's all right. Last one with John Lay, my light was flickering the entire time, and I didn't realize it until afterwards. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Again, as you said, I'm a photographer, and you too, so I'm kind of picky with that. I don't like to be like.
That's all right, man.
So where were we? Oh yeah, like it is kind of crazy because most of us come from the Instagram days where we we were used to seeing other artists and following each other and whatever, but there was never like this so close interaction with everyone else. And I don't know, it's just like Web3 made us everybody become more a family. Like I'm able to actually DM friends and just get together with other artists or share like the wins of other artists or support other artists or everything. It's crazy because it kind of reminds me of like this gatherings that you used to hear like that happened back in the day where I don't know, like artists in Paris, they would gather in a bar and they would chat about their work and they would just like, have a nice time and they would network between each other and stuff. And I feel like this is like the digital version of that, where we hear each other on spaces, we support each other, we just like even meet when each one travels to another country. So it's really nice.
Yeah, before we dive into these questions, I would just love to get your opinion on why do you think that is? Like, what do you think from Web3 has made that reality happen? Because I do agree that it feels like there is not only this need to do this, but like a real want to, like, right? Like a real want to get back to interacting with our fellow creators and the people who love our work.
I think Web3 came to be at the perfect moment because it happened during COVID, where the whole world was sick and tired of being isolated. Let's start by that. We all wanted more contact with other people. We all needed to chat with other friends, to be with people who we had something in common, right? And not everybody was used to being in social media platforms like Reddit or like something that was more constant. We were all used to Instagram, where we would just see like, like the daily pretty side of the life of everyone. But it wasn't real, like it wasn't something that felt true to us. Whereas when Web3 started, we got Twitter Spaces, we got Clubhouse, we got communities, PFP communities, then we got also one of one art. And I feel like everything at its core was always about community. Everything was always about strengthening those bonds between everybody. And the closer you are to that community, the stronger it becomes. It's like a chain. It's like the blockchain, like
Mhm.
the tighter we hold together and the more we support each other, the stronger the whole picture becomes. So I feel like it comes from that, and it's something that just becomes communal the moment that it's like a concert. You could be enjoying it by yourself at home, or you could go and enjoy it with a mass of people, right? And there's a reason why we pay more to go and be with this mass of people, because that feeling of belonging to a family, to a, I would say, a digital revolution, is something that's gonna supersede us. It's just so big.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you touched on a great point there. I think just the fact that we're on all of these different places, we're not trapped in just one box anymore. We're not just in Instagram. We're all of these different places, and it allows for just so much more open thought, right? It's something I've really enjoyed. You talked about it a little bit of like, what kind of brought a lot of us to crypto and to NFTs, but what was that moment for you that brought you towards this whole crazy world?
Well, for me, there were two key moments. The first one, well, I would say three. First one was a long time ago. My best friend, he is super into tech. He has started two companies, and he's always been a startup guy. And obviously, he was into crypto back in the day. So he was one of those guys who, you know, would go to other people and say, like, dude, invest in Bitcoin, it's the future. And he's a guy that obviously got shit for saying that, because everybody thought that they were crazy. And unfortunately, I was one of those people, and I have to admit it.
We've all been there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he got hacked with like a lot of the very, you know, common stories, and he lost a lot of money there. But yeah, that brought him a little bit down, and for many years he stayed away from it, because yeah, he did lose a lot. And when NFT started, I was focused mainly on 3D art, because on the side, few people know I am a 3D artist. So I do 3D, I do motion graphics for concert visuals. So because of that, I got to know a lot of the community that got into 3D one of one art here, which was one of the most prominent in the beginning.
Yep.
And I was really lucky that it was very big names. David Ariu, for example, I don't know if you know him, but he made a group with a lot of artists, and he was inviting us to join, because everything was just getting started. Like, nobody knew what this was. It was just like, dude, just go in there, put your art, see how it goes. It's really fucking cool. It's very different from anything you've known. People really appreciate your work. And again, I thought it was crazy. Second mistake again. Um, so the second moment was because, part of my story, a lot of people don't. I got trapped in Japan because of COVID. While I was traveling back home, I had a flight from India to Mexico. But when I was transiting through the airport in Japan, the border is closed, and I wasn't able to go back home. And that was supposed to be only for 2 weeks. And those 2 weeks turned into a month, then into 3 months, then to 6 months, then to 9 months. And obviously, because I was on a tourist visa, I wasn't able to work. The government in Japan, as we all know, is very strict with any bureaucratic stuff. So I just couldn't do anything to earn money here. So then the whole 3D part where they invited me to join, plus the need of trying to find other ways to make means, made me jump into it. And fortunately, it worked. I got in with photography, and what I would do was create work around the lockdown. And it was really cool because at the same time, like, I was documenting a historic moment, which was the lockdown in the world and in Tokyo specifically, which is a very weird moment to live, like being around one of the most crowded cities completely by yourself, seeing, for example, the Shibuya crossing absolutely empty, no screens turned on, not a soul on the street. You've been there, like,
Yeah, it's this crazy thought. Even just of course, why not have not only can I share this artwork with the world and have it live forever on the blockchain, but I get to document, this experience, and I think that that's really amazing. It's like I can make money and I can document. I think that those two things together are just like, why not dive deeper into NFTs, right?
and you totally nailed it, because that's the artist's dream, right? That's what we all wanted to do. Like, we were on Instagram and we were so used to only making content for the sake of making content and getting the exposure. But in the end, what we wanted to do was this. Like, everything that we created would have a goal of being sold, would have the goal of having a longer impact in the long run. It was just not a post that lasted for 24 hours and then everybody forgot about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite funny how that shifts. We were talking a little bit about how you got into the tech side of things, but what was it that really made you? You said you do 3D art as well, but what was it that made you fall so deeply in love with photography?
That's another story. My father passed away a couple of years ago, and it was a very tough moment for me. It was a very dark moment. And I fell into very strong depression, which led into nearly suicide. And it's hard.
Well, take your time, and we can talk about as much or as little.
Nah, it's fine, because I think I'm at the point where I actually like to say this, because I would love photography to inspire other people like it did to me. Um, uh, so as I said, it nearly led to suicide, and I I'm really fortunate that it didn't happen. Um, I had a conversation with myself just at that moment, and I was starting to tell myself, like, is this really game over, or is this where you just stop? Like, are you really not gonna live anything else? And it was very eerie, because at the same moment I had this flashback of so many amazing moments that I had lived, like birthdays or meeting friends, or like trips I made. But all those flashbacks were photos that I had in my head, right? It's pictures, and I would just see pictures and pictures and pictures and pictures of all those moments. And I realized that there was a very strong link between that and photography. And my best friend had always told me to get into photography, and I never did until then. He actually went to my house and he pulled me out and he gave me a camera and he told me, you need to do something else. Like, you need to get your head out of that. And he gave me a camera and he told me, just go out and shoot. And little by little, photography made me focus in other stuff. because that's what you have to do. Like when you put a camera in front of your eyes, you have to start looking for stuff that you want to shoot. It's not like, oh, because I'm depressed, I'm just gonna try to see the world looking as shitty as I think. I wanted to do the opposite. I wanted to get out of that hole, right? So I decided to focus on finding the beauty in life, finding the beauty in candid moments, finding the beauty in everyday life scenes, because that's what I needed. And little by little, I didn't even know what documentary photography was. I didn't even know about street photography. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just shooting what I found that was beautiful. And little by little, that started leading me towards where I'm at now.
Wow, man, it's really powerful what happens when you like find something where you can speak those words or get that solace. I found the camera to be that for me as well, and there's something, you're right, there's something about just like having to go out into the world, and like even if you don't fucking feel like it, right, you just making yourself go out there and find something beautiful in the world is it's a powerful thing. And I really thank you for sharing that, because I do think that more people need to know, like, and whether it be a camera or a paintbrush or whatever, right, just like all of these different mediums of art are just different forms of healing, and being able to express what sometimes you can't let out otherwise.
That's a crazy part, because I've debated a lot of why we love art. Why are there people willing to pay so much for art, you know? And I do feel like ego plays a long part in our existence as human beings right now. And it really, it ruins a lot of stuff from my perspective, because it makes us think that we understand it all and that we know it all, and we don't. Let's just be clear, there's a lot of things that we don't understand, that we don't know, that we just assume that exist, and that's it, right? But if we just leave the ego aside for a moment, and we realize how small we are in this world, how naive even the thought of thinking that you understand everything is, and you focus more on just letting be and taking stuff in, everything changes. You just, I love using this example, like an airplane, right? Something that weighs so much is flying. I know we understand the physics of an airplane, why it's there, but forget about it. Just look at it in a more poetic way. Like that thing, that massive thing is there. Or like even how it feels like to when a raindrop falls on you, or like just looking at the wind blowing in grass. I don't know, like super soothing stuff that we just forget to see because we're busy thinking about other stuff. And art speaks to that side of us where we don't need to think, where it appeals more to the subconscious, to our memories, and that's where it empathizes so much. That's when it connects. And that's why I also feel like abstract paintings are so powerful, because they're abstract. And this there's so much questions that they raise, but at the same time there's so many answers that we don't understand why we're getting them, but we get them because they're in the back of us, like they're acting in the subconscious, and that's what actually understands it. And then that's why also in photography, even if you see a picture of a completely different person who isn't related to you, who has nothing to do with you, suddenly it's like, wow, that actually connects with me, and I don't understand why. And it's because it's appealing to that other side of us that is not rational, that just exists and just understands things in a very different way.
No, that's incredible, man. I couldn't agree more, and I think that that just making people slow down, right? Like if you can accomplish that, you've won a lot of the battle, right? Just like like what are we doing on Twitter? It's the same thing. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Oh wow, you see something and it captivates you for how many ever seconds, right? But like that's a moment of slowing down. Like should we make those moments a little bit longer? Absolutely, right? But I think that it's kind of the same premise, you know.
That's actually what I've been doing with the last pieces, the seconds of life videos that you've been seeing. And even I wrote a slogan that says, let me pull it up.
It's such a cool series also. Like I think that you know that like I feel like you existed as an artist for a good while, but as soon as that series like went out into the world, people were like, "Oh shit," you know, like it really did what we're talking about now and slowed them down to learn about you as an artist, which is a really incredible feat.
It's because that's the whole point of art, like slowing down, like giving the time for things to be. And we're so not used to that. We're so used to having immediate responses, having immediate impact on everything. And sorry to say it that way, but it fucks up a lot of stuff. It fucks up relationships. It screws up food. Like whenever we go and taste something new, like it, we have to give it time to sit, to settle into us. It's not something that's just gonna be like the first impression and that's it. And sorry, but if someone looks at art that way, it's not working, because you do have to take your time to understand it, to feel it, to relate to it. And that's why they even tell you, like when you're in a museum, in a gallery, you have to appreciate it from a certain distance. You have to take a couple of minutes to see it, to look at the details, to get lost in it, because then is when you find the true beauty in it. And that's why I was saying, like, you completely nailed it. Because, for example, the slogan that I wrote for the Seconds of Life pieces is exactly slow down, breathe, and enjoy the fleeting seconds of life. That's why the pieces only last a few couple of seconds, because the goal of it is that, like, it's only a couple of seconds that can make your day. You don't need to watch a full length movie of 2 hours and then be mind blown. It's so simple. It's just give yourself a break.
I
And
agree more,
that's
man.
the core of this.
Yeah, it's really impressive too to see these at scale. I was lucky enough to be out at the Hamptons gallery event, and I haven't said this to you, but I've said this to others. Seeing like older women, like you know, 60, 70 years old, just like this close to a screen and being just immersed. And I remember this one woman standing there for, she had to have been there. You can tell these people have experience, you know, actually absorbing art. She was standing there for 3 or 4 minutes, and then she turns around to me and is like, I really feel like I'm just like stepping out of the subway in Japan. And I was like, I was like, that right there is everything of what this is all about, you know. And
you gave me chills.
you know, it was really cool to see that correlate and to have it be so big, right? To see these on the Twitter feed is one thing, but to see them in like on a bigger screen like that was really impressive.
Oh man, that's that's so nice, because that was the point of those pieces. Like I I've lived with 3D, sorry, with surrounded by screens all my life, ever since I was a kid. Like like we grew up and we were like, oh, we want the newest computer, or we want the newest Game Boy, or and I lived through all that phase of from the very old TVs towards all the digital era. And I just fell in love with screens. I have a thing for screens, and I just love making content for them, understanding them, and making something that pushes the boundaries for what we can see. And Seconds of Life, and in general, I think all of my work has always been centered towards the possibilities of the screen. How the electricity can translate into such, how can I say it, like vibrant piece? Because it's one thing to print your work and to use traditional mediums.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that screens have a completely different capacity that hasn't really been explored, which is the illumination, like the light that it emits, that can just make your work look so much stronger if you know how to use it properly. Because screens have different properties. They are better for certain colors, or they're better like something as simple as like finding true blacks, true whites. I don't know, like there's just like so much stuff. Like even studying each kind of color, like for example, reds pop out more on certain screens. I don't know, like there's a lot of stuff. But the point is,
Super interesting. I'm curious if that kind of thought process goes into all of your art that is coming out onto, like, let's say Twitter, or prior to that Instagram,
always, 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 because I was educated to, well, I used to study design and digital media, right? So that's my profession. I am the creative director, and I always created stuff for screens. As I said, I just love those shits. But the point is, we all know that art and most of the content that we normally digest comes through screens, right? So there's a lot of people that are still trying to build stuff for more traditional mediums, which is completely understandable. But from my perspective, if art is evolving into this digital form, which was some completely unexpected because I used to do this before crypto, right? But because I used to create for Instagram, the logic was, okay, so Instagram is displayed on a phone, right? So therefore, my main medium is going to be a phone. It's going to be a screen. So I have to make my work look at its best on a screen. Because I don't care for printing. Like I could do prints, but prints always look dull. Prints don't translate into the energy that I would like to give. Because most of my work is like very vibrant, very strong, very punchy. And it's very hard to achieve that with a print. And on the other hand, you have a screen that's emitting light that you can punch the brightness to the top, and then the electricity of the nightlife in Tokyo translates. Then the punchy yellows of the cabs translate. Then greens, everything just starts to come to life. And that's what I really wanted. That I wanted that whenever someone sees one of my pieces, feels the noise, feels the strength, feels the electricity. And what better medium than an electric medium to talk about electricity?
Yeah, it's such a cool way to think about things, and it just goes to show that there's so much more that goes into photography. Of course, you and I know that, but like where you're displaying it, and all of these things, they all go into what makes that image impactful, right? And there is a real psychology behind that, which I think it's important to talk about, right? And speaking of your love of screens, I know you also have a love of just like tech and camera goodies, right? I've seen your setup and it's quite amazing, all of your gear. But I'm curious on like how the gear mixes with your creation process, right? Like how do you strap up like Batman over here with all of your gear for making one of your pieces?
So there's there's a constant battle between the question of, does gear matter, right? Does it really make you better? Does it really change your work? And I think that there are two phases. Like, one is, normally, at least I'm going to speak from a photographer's point of view. When we start, gear is super sexy. Like, we want to buy the latest lens, we want to buy the latest camera, we want to buy and buy and buy and buy. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing it to make our work better. It just means that we fucking love it. It's beautiful, and like the latest Sony camera has like AI and looks at the eyes and whatever not. And it's appealing. I'm not gonna lie, it is appealing, and it's something that people buy into. And I did for a long time. Like, I had a collection of over 40 lenses, but all of those were vintage. And the whole reason behind that was exploring the character. And this was back before people started exploring vintage glass and stuff like that. I didn't have enough money to buy digital lenses. So my only other option was like, oh shit, like there are this super cheap vintage lenses on the market, and I can adapt them to the first Sony mirrorless camera that came out, right? And that was the only reason why I bought Sony, because I could just mount any freaking lens that I wanted. So I started buying old school Leica lenses, Nikon lenses, Canon lenses, whatever. And nobody was speaking about character. It was just like, character was actually flaws. Like, that was shitty lenses. Like, if you were buying a vintage lens, it was just like, oh, like, you don't have the money for a good one, right? But I started noticing that it was really beautiful. Like, there were many differences between vintage lenses and digital lenses, that digital lenses were just evolving towards perfection, whereas vintage lenses had a lot of personality and brought a lot of new stuff to photography that I felt like had been lost, because everybody was striving to perfection, but perfection only meant standardizing everything to the point where everything looked the same. And I didn't want that, because art isn't that. Art is about expression. And I wanted to express different things, and therefore vintage lenses gave me that opportunity. So I started doing that, and that little by little led me to realizing that I didn't need that much gear. And then, after having a huge collection, I started selling everything away. I didn't realize that I wanted to focus only on one lens and one camera and master that, because I really didn't need to use a 70 to 200 millimeter lens for every single shot. I was only using either a 50 millimeter or a 35 millimeter 1.4. That was it. So I sold everything, used that money to fund my first trip to Japan. And I just freaking loved it, because I was only carrying one lens, one camera, and the only thing that was limiting me was my creativity. How could I achieve those shots that I really wanted with those optics? And that became a power, because I have some articles out there explaining like how within limitation there lies so much creativity. The more we limit ourselves, the more possibilities we have to become even better with that little things we have. And lo and behold, I just started loving it, and that became like my signature. I only shoot with one lens, one camera all the time. And I feel like that also makes you master your gear, which is super important in any kind of art. Um, where you can pick it up and you don't even feel like you're picking it up because it's so natural. You need it. It's just there. It's embedded on you. So let's say for me, like I'll always have a camera with me, and I always think and see as if I had a camera in front of me. And if I want to shoot something, it's just like it's immediate, and I don't think about it. I just do it, and that's how you end up mastering something, and it just becomes better and better and better because it's so embedded that you understand it so well that you can do whatever.
It's like your brain almost becomes the focal length of your
Yeah.
lens, right? Like I was very much that way as well. And nowadays I like to I have a little point and shoot with a variable zoom, which I use for a lot of things. But when I'm out with my main camera, I'm the same way. Just like my 85 or my 50 is just like what I really love. And you do start to think in that focal length. And it's you might be here with your human eyes, but I'm here with this shot through a different perspective, and I think that's what makes it so beautiful. And it really comes across with your imagery that you know right where you are with those different depths, right? And I think that constraint really has built like a very characteristic image that you take.
It also builds a lot of consistency throughout all your work, and I feel like that's something that people haven't really embraced because that's a huge factor that differs from someone who is starting and someone who steps more into the professional realm, right? You have to develop a signature style. And part of that signature style is knowing your tools so well that it just becomes a consistent flow. Like all the work that you create with those tools always will have that same look. Even if the output looks very different, there are certain visual cues that always give you the hint that it's that artist. So as you said, like for example, the focal length, the colors, the compositions, many visual references always. Let me say that again. Um, there are so many visual references that give you cues to what a signature style is, right? We have the composition, we have the colors, we have the framing, we have even like the shutter speeds. Like there are people who love shooting longer exposures, people who love freezing stuff. Um, every single thing that you put into your work adds up. So I love saying it's like reading a book, and each one of those references is like a word, and you're writing something. So again, from the color to the composition to whatever, you're writing a whole sentence that in the end leads to something, and you want it to flow as best as possible and to be as similar as all your work as possible. So being able to master what you have, being able to understand your resources is extremely important. Hence why I curate my gear so much. I love a certain type of camera. I love a certain type of tripod. I love a certain type of stabilizer. Like everything I have has been curated to the point where I trust it absolutely, and I don't have to worry about the results because I already know how it's going to be.
That's the Japanese work ethic coming across.
I'm becoming Japanese, I think.
Yeah, that's all right. There's worse things, especially when it comes to, a work ethic and, the seek of perfection, which I feel like is something that I definitely learn a lot from just watching people with discipline, right? And I feel like it's definitely a culture that has a lot of discipline.
But that's the funny thing, right? Because that's what we normally think. But when you start living here and you start dipping your toes more into Japanese philosophy, a lot lays on letting go. We think that control is everything, and we think that perfectioning our work is perfect, but it actually isn't. And that takes me back to what I was saying, how photography was striving to perfection, and perfection only led to it becoming standardized and losing character. And that's why people love Japanese art, because it does seem perfect, but it's the art of imperfection. It's the art of understanding that there's so much beauty in things that we just let be, because that's what we also want. That's why we want to relax. That's why we want to be calm, because we want to be in that state where we lose control and we just let life happen. And that's why I love shooting street photography and doing the seconds of life, because it is that. I just let things be where they reach the point of being zen. And that's why people connect, because I'm not making a model pose, because I'm not controlling all the pre-production and stuff. I literally just grab my camera, put it on a small tripod, and just walk around the city while it's raining, looking for something that I really love, looking for someone doing some beautiful gesture, looking for someone eating a ramen, looking for someone, whatever, like reading a book, sitting on a train. And that's the kind of moments where people are so raw, people are so out of themselves, they're not really thinking what they're doing, that's where the beauty of humanity lies. That's where we see the raw human interaction happening. And hence, for example, why we also love the super dramatic street photography where we see people screaming, or someone, like, let's say they're in a windy moment in middle of Chicago and the umbrella just broke and they're yelling, and like, it's those kind of moments where humans are being human, where we're like, wow, it's just so freaking beautiful, because they just let go.
Yeah, that's really powerful, man. I love the way you speak about just art in general. I think it really goes to show. I'm curious on how you take these philosophies and all that you do with the thoughts behind your art into the marketing side. We've talked a lot about the art side, and I can talk with you all day, but I think it would be really interesting to hear how you adapt those things, because I know that's something that so many artists struggle with, and I'm sure, it's something that comes from so much trial and error, but you've hit this perfect, to me at least, this perfect way of expressing your art and it coming across through a tweet, right? Or through whatever means that people are discovering art, but mainly right now, of course, is Twitter for NFTs.
It is a hard formula. I actually even personal formula. I went through many phases, and probably you saw it from everybody that jumps into one-on-one work here. We try to copy marketing strategies from the best artists, or we try to implement traditional marketing, and we try shilling, and we try jumping into spaces and being like, yo, I have this piece, like, you should look at it, because you know and it's so funny, because every single time I'm blessed to, because of photography and Instagram and everything, I knew very strong photographers who became a really big figure in this space. So let's say Monati, Billy Dean, Sixth Street Under, Eel Concept. I would just ask them like, what do you do? You know, like how are you marketing yourself and stuff? And they told me like, I don't. I'm me. And I know that it sounds funny and it might even seem ridiculous to some people, but it's the truth. Like whenever someone asks me like, oh, how do you do this? It's just be true to yourself. Like if you are an artist and you do love what you do, it translates. It has to translate. It's not something that you can force. It's not something that you can copy. It just is. And there's a reason why the art you create stands out, because it's yours, because it's you. And the moment that you understand your art, you know how to talk about it. You know how to explain it. You know how to show it, because you created that. It's your baby and you're proud of it. So at some point, like even trying to show your art or trying to market it in some traditional way doesn't make any sense, because you're not selling a product. You're selling a part of you. And what better to sell yourself than you and being yourself? And when people feel like you're honest, when people realize that you are truthful, that you are out there showing yourself to everybody, that's when you become an artist. That's when people buy your stuff, because they know that they're reading you, they're buying you, not just any other picture that they could find on the internet.
Yeah, it is. It's so funny. I always say the same thing, and I feel ridiculous. Like be yourself, and people are like, "What kind of advice is that?" And I'm like, "The best advice I can give you." And we're fortunate to share some of those same friends that we also admire their work deeply. Me being in New York, I know many of those people deeply, and same way, right? Like I asked them like as I'm entering the space, and I before I entered the space myself as an artist, they had already started kind of getting this success, and I'm like, you guys don't seem to be doing anything differently. Like, how is this work selling? And it always leads back to those conversations, right? And it's just like, just be yourself, and you end up making it harder for yourself if you create this narrative in which you have to live, right? You're almost like adding more work to what you have to do. And at the end of the day, it's like it's all about being yourself and relationships.
I think it's really sad to think that a lot of social media has had very bad repercussions towards how we are as individuals. There's a lot of pressure towards showing success, towards showing another life that it's not ours. Like we want to be this perfect human that does this perfect work, that has this perfect house, and that's bullshit. That's obviously bullshit. Like we don't all have the perfect life. We don't all have the perfect car. We don't have the perfect anything. And within that, trying to be perfect, the same thing that happened to art happens to us. We lose ourselves and we try to become one more of that standardized version of what we think is best, but it isn't. And then when you see these people who are actually successful, who are actually making it, and we go to them and we ask them like, yo, what are you doing? They just tell you to be yourself. And That's why it sounds ridiculous, because we fought so much trying to not be ourselves, right? It's ridiculous. But the whole key is just be you. Because in the end, if you are an artist, there's something interesting you have to say. Like, if you don't have anything interesting to say, I'm sorry, but you're in the wrong area.
I agree. Um, that brings me to, you just said like the word area, and it brought me here mentally. What was it that brought you towards Solana? Like it's a space where I would still even consider photography to be new. But what was it that was that spark that drove you to want to do that? Because I know you had already been on Ethereum. You'd already explored all of these blockchains. Um, but what was it that finally kind of made you choose to go that route?
So while I was on Ethereum, a really good friend of mine who I met because of LinkedIn, some really random shit. He's Nick, who other people know as Cab Animation, who is the co-founder for Kleinosaurus. He saw my work and he was like, "Dude, you should try Solana." He was like big on Solana. He loves Solana, and I was on ETH, and I was like, "But like what people on ETH say about Sol." And I was like, "But a lot of people say like, don't go to Sol. Like, there's like so many taboos and stuff going around." And he would be hardcore, like, get into Sol, get into Sol, get into Sol, give it a shot. There's a new platform coming up. Try and hit them up and see if you can join. Like, you won't lose anything. Just give it a try. And at some point I was like, okay, it's been too much. Like, let's give it a shot. There's a reason why he's telling me to try, right? What is there to lose? And lo and behold, I gave it a shot. And it was, even before photography was new, it was nothing.
Yeah.
Nobody invested in photography, and so nobody wanted to put anything into photography because there were so many, again, taboos, and there was so little education about the genre that it was a very risky investment. And even those who did it for the art were still hesitating about doing it, even if it was really selling on Ethereum. Solana was a completely different world, and I just couldn't believe it because I was having sales on Ethereum like 1 ETH, 1.5 ETH, and stuff, and I would try to sell on Sol, and I wasn't selling shit. So I realized that I had to lower my head and start again, and I started selling stuff on Sol for 3 Sol, 2 Sol, having had those sales on ETH, and little by little, the community started to embrace me. And little by little, they noticed, like, oh, this guy is actually putting really good stuff at a very accessible price. So people started trusting me because I was giving it my all. Like, I knew that this work was worth way more, but I also wanted to earn the respect and the trust of people. And you have to lower your head. You have to be humble. You have to pay respect to everybody. And if you're entering a new space, you're new. It doesn't matter who you are. And thanks to that, I started meeting a lot of amazing people: Quincy, Milst, Brad, Compound. There's just a ton of pips. I don't even, I hope I could just give a shout out to everybody. But everybody just started helping me because they knew that I was grinding hard. Like, I was hustling, and the biggest issue for me is I love Tokyo, but sorry, the time zone here is shit. Like, I'm completely the opposite from anybody else. So not only I had to grind a lot to sell, but I also had to stay up, and I still do every single day. My wife wakes up at 7 a.m. I go to sleep at 7 a.m. I have to adjust my time zone to the time zone where everybody is awake, because if not, and you have to make sacrifices. And little by little, people started seeing that I was building, that I was supporting, that I am willing to do whatever it takes to go up there and just show that I want to make it, that I want to help, that I want to support other artists, that I want to put amazing work out there. And I started growing, and people started collecting more. My price started to go up again, and I started diversifying, and stuff worked. But it was a lot of work, a lot of work. Like I was talking with one of my collectors, and I was telling him, like, like I just had the super rare sale for three. It was so nice, because I was showing him, like, oh, look at this 3 soul sale, which was one of my first ones, versus this 3 sale. It's surreal. Or like the all-time high with Planosaurs that was 96 soul or stuff like that. And it's like, and suddenly some people come up to you and they think that it's magic. Like, oh, like you're so lucky. And it's like, fuck you, it's not luck. Like, if you had an idea of how much sacrifice has gone on to this, how much work, how much passion, how much everything, then you would understand why those 3 soul turned into 96 or into in the future, whatever. Because I love what I do. And I just want to see it where it has to be.
I think it's important too, and I had the same experience when I came over from ETH. I was already getting these large sales, like consistently over an ETH sales, and I just had to get rid of that ego. You mentioned ego earlier. It's like you have to like just crumble it up and like get your hands dirty again. And I think that that's a really important message that you said there for everyone. But speaking of that, like I would love to know what would 3 tips that you would give to a photographer that is joining Solana today? Obviously, things are a little different now, and there is a little bit more of an established of a market. But I feel like that could really help new photographers who are entering the ecosystem.
Build a community. I know that everybody says that, but there's a reason why everybody says it. Build your family, build your community. Give it your all, your everything. Because a common thing that I've noticed is a lot of people think that NFTs are just a space where you enter and magically things happen, right? And this is not a cash grab. I'm sorry for anyone who's hearing this and thought that they would make magic money, but this isn't that. You might get lucky and make a few sales, but if you really want to be consistent, if you really want to have those that record of sales, the only way to do it is working a lot. As I said, like, I take this full time. I stay awake all night. Put your best work. Don't just drop anything you have and expect it to sell. Like, curate your work. That's key. Don't just grab any files that you have in your computer and put it up, because there's so much stuff already up there. And the only way that you're going to be able to differentiate yourself from everybody else is putting your best stuff up there. And if you have to sell it for a lower price, I'm sorry, but you have to sell it for a lower price to start with. You have to build a name. You have to show people who you are. And little by little, you'll start becoming someone, right? And if it's part of your best work and it's sold for, in my example, 3 soul, you are an artist. You have the capacity to make more and better work. So, for example, in my experience, what happened was, if I sold my stuff for 3 soul, that would only push me to create better stuff to be able to sell for higher. And it just becomes like this cycle where I just want to push my best, right? And I feel like that's why people become successful, because they don't push 50 pieces, they push 5, which are their best ones. They sell, and then they work their asses off to make another 5 that are their best, and then they sell, and so on. It's not selling volume, but selling quality. Because in the end, each piece that you sell is your name. That piece that you sold is a little bit of you. And you want all those tiny bits of you to be the best version you can. So that's, I feel like, one of the key things that lead to success over here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, man. And we are getting close to an hour here, or just right at an hour here. But I have one more question for you before we wrap things up. And I think that obviously, like everything that you do, and from listening to you talk, I can tell that you really learn from every bit of the process. I think that if you're not learning, what are you doing anyway, right? It's like even just walking down the street, I can absorb something and learn something else. But what have you learned from your time releasing art on Solana and Exchange Art?
Oh my god, it's been a journey. I think to listen, to shut up and listen, or to read. um, People give away a lot of things, and we're so focused on ourselves that we forget to listen to others. And your collectors are your best friends, and the other artists are your best friends, and you can learn so much from them, from price points to marketing to supporting to everything. For me, I have collectors that I speak to every single day. Shout out to Dro, shout out to Flannel Capital. I love those two guys. Like, we speak every single day. I don't know how they stand me, but um they just became my family. And I'm not joking. Like, I think I talk to them the same amount that I speak to my wife. Um but Exchange became part of my family too. And they saw the potential in my work. They saw my passion for Web3. They saw my passion for art. Um, and they just embraced me. And that's something that I really appreciate. I tend to say that I feel sometimes like a stray dog, and sometimes somebody comes and is like, come here, I'll take care of you a little. That's how I feel, because I'm so grateful for every single one, like collectors, marketplace people, of friends, artists, whatever, because I'm a nobody. And every single person who gives me the chance, I want to repay 3 times, 4 times, 10 times more that the chance they gave me. So, ah, sorry, but I've been someone who has touched rock bottom, and I feel like that's something that only the people who have been into deep, deep, deep shit can relate to. And you know what it feels like to lose everything, and you know what it feels like to have no one by your side. And then you learn how to value all these opportunities that you get. And Web3 has a lot of those opportunities. I can say there are amazing people on Web3. There are a lot of great, great, great hearts in the NFT community who are willing to support the dream of artists who we never thought that we would actually have a chance like this. And it's just insane. It's insane. We're getting used to it. We're seeing it every day, but never forget that this is a chance for you to actually do the thing that you love, for you to spend time doing what you want to actually be doing. And there's people willing to give you money for that, to support you, to be there for you. That's family. And that's the only thing I can say, that your collectors are your family. Your friends here are your family. They're all supporting you. They're unconditional.
Yeah,
And
I
you
think
have to do your best.
really special, man. I think people get so wrapped up in like the self part of things that they forget about everything else. And I'm sure we've all been guilty of that, right? It's like when you're busy and you forget to call your mom or something, right? Like same kind of concept, right? It's like just make sure you don't make sure you don't ignore that, right? Make sure you take that time to really uh, speak and just be a human being to the people around you. I think it's going to be really important. And I hope that we never, as we keep getting used to this, I hope that we never get to the point where we take it for granted, because I think that that's what makes this space so much more special than what, like, to go a whole round back to the beginning of this conversation. That's what makes it more special than Instagram, right? Is just like what you said.
I heard a very interesting saying, which is the peak of one mountain is just the bottom of the next one. So, as you said, never take anything for granted. Nothing is for granted. And the relationships that you'll build here, the friends, the family, the pieces that you sell, everything. Remember, everything you're doing here stays in the blockchain and it lives on forever. So that's why I make so much emphasis and put only your best out there, because it's that what you're putting out there that will live on forever, and you want that version of you to be the one that everybody remembers.
Absolutely kill it, my friend. This was a really, really amazing chat. I really could go all night on here. Honestly, I I really appreciate your time and just like making this happen on such short notice. It's really cool to be able to do these kind of chats. And like I feel like Twitter Spaces is so fast, right? We're talking about content, and with this, we really want to slow things down. We really want to just like take the time to get into that brain of yours and to hear about exactly how these things happen. So it's really an honor to take this time with you, man.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that, because yeah, like I I feel like the thing that's lacking a lot is being open and vulnerable. And again, that's what makes us human, and that's what really translates. It's like you, like finally now meeting you, like that already establishes a really cool bond. And that's something that we need. We need to meet more, we need to talk more, we need to be more ourselves. And dude, this is exactly what we needed.